Hi everyone, my name is Terry Westwell and today is Tuesday, which means it's time to discuss our book of the week, which is Starside by Alex Aster. So first, this is a spoiler-free section, so if you haven't read this book yet, don't worry about it, it won't be spoiled for you here. There will be some spoiler-related things I want to discuss, but that'll be later on in the video and you will get plenty of warning. If you'd like to join in on any of the discussions, send me your thoughts, comments, or even a short video clip of you discussing the book. Then I'll list the next upcoming 4 books in the description below. So I rated this book 5 stars. Honestly, I really enjoyed it. I have previously read Alex Aster's Lilac before, which is a YA fantasy, and while I did enjoy that, this one did just knock it out of the park for me. This one is an adult romantasy, and I think personally it just works so much better. In fact, I actually read this book twice because at first I read the physical book and then I decided to go back and read the audiobook as well. Okay, so quick summary. Hundreds of years ago, there was a brutal war that split the world in two. On one side, you have Starside, where you have immortals and gods and magic. And then on the other, you have Stormside, which is full of mortals who are living on those scraps of magic. So every 50 years, 50 challenges can cross into Starside on a dangerous quest to obtain some of that magic that can heal, grant wealth, and even extend life. This story follows Aris, who is an orphaned blacksmith apprentice who enters the competitions not for power, but for revenge against the gods she believed destroyed her life. And honestly, that setup had me hooked immediately. If I had to compare this to any other book, then I would say that it's kind of a mixture between books like Fourth Wing, Direbound, Serpent and the Wings of Night. It's definitely a romantasy that is fast-paced, easy to get into, very character-driven, and just very easy to read. I know books like these often get a lot of criticism for being too easy to read, and this might be controversial, but I don't care. I think that a lot of people confuse accessible and easy to read with bad writing, and I just don't think that those things are the same. Personally, if every sentence is really lyrical and overcomplicated and it starts to sound like something that a real person wouldn't say, then I think that it just runs the risk of pulling me out of the story and not immersing myself in it, and it starts to kind of sound a bit pretentious. Personally, I care way more about whether or not I'm enjoying the journey, if I'm emotionally invested, or if I'm immersed in this world, way more than I do about whether or not the sentence sounds like poetry. And if you prefer more lyrical writing or more complex writing, then that's absolutely fine. Go and read one of those books. I just don't feel like simpler writing style deserves to be looked down on because, a different group of people find it more accessible and more enjoyable. Also, just another little tangent, but people really seem to love accusing newer romantasy books of copying others because they share the same tropes. At this point, no story is completely original. Everything is inspired by something else, and tropes and micro-tropes exist because readers enjoy them, and they are going to reappear in, hundreds if not thousands of other books. Honestly, I care way more about whether or not I'm finding a book entertaining than I do about whether or not someone somewhere wrote a corset scene first. And honestly, if you wanted to make arguments like that, then I'm sure that the first corset scene was probably written during a time when people actually wore corsets as their regular attire and not somewhere in the 2000s. Sorry, let's move on from those tangents. This book hooked me really quickly. One thing that I do really like about Alex Aster's writing is how she creates worlds that feel very vivid and immersive, but without drowning you in a ton of detail. Like, you get a really good sense of the setting, the danger, the magic, and the atmosphere, but it still stays really easy to read. And personally, I love that. Like, I never want to feel like I have to decode a book after I've had a really long day. I just want to immerse myself into the world and enjoy the journey, and I think that this book does a really good job of that. The world building is honestly one of my favourite parts, which is quite surprising because it's not always something that I put too much of a focus on. But there's magical creatures, there's dangerous landscapes, immortal politics, ancient magics, and honestly, it just constantly feels like anything could happen next. It just always made things really interesting because you never knew where they were going next, what creature might appear, or what danger might be lurking around the next corner. And despite all of that, it still remained incredibly accessible and easy to follow. I did like the characters, but I will say that while Aris is a very strong female main character, she's also very young and naive and even arrogant at times. Like, there were some moments where I would just think, girl, you are not prepared for this, which in some ways made it feel a little bit more realistic, even though it did clash with this image of an ultra capable heroine. I also really liked Harlan. The chemistry, the tension, the enemies to lovers, it all worked really well for me. And honestly, the book contains some of my favourite tropes. It's enemies to lovers, forced proximity, trials, morally grey characters, and slow burn romance, which is probably why I devoured it so quickly. Unlike Alex Aster's other books, this one does contain some spice, which I did think was quite well done. There is tension between the characters right from the very beginning, but because this is a slow burn romance, I think that the payoff just works that bit better. The pacing for me was great. I mean, it was fast enough that it kept me engaged, but there were slower moments that actually let the relationship and the world building breathe. And more importantly, it didn't feel like there were any moments that particularly dragged. It was just one of those books where I think that everything worked together really well, and I was genuinely excited to keep turning every page. My only criticism was the one that I mentioned earlier, which was just that the main character sometimes felt really unprepared, especially given the nature of her revenge plan. Like, it didn't ruin it for me, but there were moments where I did definitely question how realistic her confidence was. Also, I definitely wanted more dragons, but I'm hoping for more of that in the next book. So, as for the question, would I recommend the book? Absolutely, especially if you are into romantasy, enemies to lovers, deadly trials, and worlds, and immersive worlds that are just still really incredibly easy to read. Will I be reading any more by this author? Yes, absolutely. In fact, I think that the second book has already been announced for later on this year, and I will definitely be reading it. So earlier on in the video, I said that you would get plenty of warning for any upcoming spoilers. Now, this is that moment, so if you haven't read this book yet, I would suggest going doing that first, because beyond this point, there will absolutely be spoilers. One thing I loved and hated about this book was just how unprepared and naive that main character is, and I do feel like she should have been more prepared. She is entering this big dangerous world with this huge mission, this huge quest, and yet she does not have the experience to pull it off. But at the same time, I kind of feel like, given where she came from, it does make her a little bit more realistic. I also really hope that we see some form of repercussion for Caddock consuming that magic at the end, because I feel like that's going to be something that's incredibly important moving forward. And while I can't say that I was completely shocked by the ending, it did make me absolutely desperate to read the next one. Which is obviously exactly what you want from the first book in a series. I do hope that we get to see some of these characters come back again for the second book, although I don't think we'll be seeing Kira again, which is really unfortunate because I quite liked her character and it was quite sad what happened to her. So overall, Starside is a immersive, addictive, tense, and just incredibly fun read. It's a type of romantasy that absolutely works for me. But if you've read it, let me know what you think, especially if you preferred this or Lilac, because for me, this one wins hands down. Next week, we're discussing Want to Know a Secret by Freida McFadden, so don't forget to get your thoughts and comments in by Sunday the 24th of May at the latest to be a part of the discussion. You can now do this on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, or Discord. The following week will be Out on a Limb, but don't forget if you do need a little bit longer to read a book, we do now list the next 4 books down below along with the discussion dates. That way you can choose a genre that best suits you and the best time frame to read it in. Thank you all for joining, and if you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It's always appreciated, and I will see you next week. Bye! If you like romance, fantasy, or even thriller, basically anything fiction book related, then I suggest you head on over to the channel's intro video, where you can find out more information on how you can take part in this online book club. We announce books at least 4 weeks in advance, and we accept your bookish feedback in a wide manner of ways. Post your comment below a video, send in a voice note, or even send me a short video clip of you discussing the book. Alternatively, you can just send me a direct message.